when Kirby Smart goes into the houses, the living rooms, the dining room tables, the homes of these high school football players that he's trying to get to Athens, I think that one of the only things he really even has to do, if showing them the 2 national championship trophies isn't enough, is tell them to turn on the TV on Sunday, right? Turn on the TV on Sunday and watch these Georgia Bulldogs play in the NFL. Georgia players are making noise during the preseason, right? Are we surprised? Are we surprised? 15 players drafted in 2022, 10 drafted in 2023, right? Kirby, the number's over 50 now for how many players he's had drafted in his tenure, but 25 in 2 years, 7 first-rounders in a 2-year span. It doesn't happen very often, right? Alabama, Nick Saban has obviously produced a lot of talent. Ohio State produced a lot of talent. LSU, schools like that produce a lot of talent. But a 2-year stretch with 25 players drafted in the NFL is a big deal, especially when a lot of that's on the defensive side of the ball. But Jalen Carter making plays, Keely Ringo making plays, George Pickens making plays, Stetson Bennett throwing touchdowns in NFL preseason. These guys are getting some of their first shot at real NFL time in these NFL stadiums, and it's going to continue happening because Georgia will. They're not NFLU yet, but Georgia's on its way to that, right? Alabama, I think there was actually something recently that there was some piece of content produced recently that showed Alabama being NFLU. ESPN might have done it. I don't know, where they own this position group, they're the best, this position group, they're the best, right? Georgia is going to start inching closer with that tight end for sure. RBU has been there for a long time, that sentiment. Linebacker University has been there for that sentiment. But it's spreading. And now there are multiple Georgia quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's been the case. But now there's another one in Stetson Bennett. And there might be another one next year if whoever starts for Georgia has a really good season and they're allowed to come out, because Carson Beck and or Brock Vandagriff, they both would be allowed to enter the NFL draft after this football season. And that's another thing that can happen. But that would be one of those things where I'm saying, I'm in the household, I'm going to these kids, I'm trying to convince them, why do you come to Georgia? Why do you want to come to Georgia? Do you want to play in the NFL? Because this is going to be one of the best places that can prepare you to do something like that. Ryan Curley from Dog Post here talking about NFL preseason. These guys, the Georgia players, are making noise already. Stetson Bennett looked good. I think he led 3 scoring drives, and one ended with him throwing a touchdown pass towards the end of the second quarter of a Rams preseason game. He looks good, right? And X, Twitter, whatever, social media, all that is, of course, freaking out about Stetson Bennett, as they usually do one way or another. And they're saying, oh, wow, he's really good. Yeah, he's been pretty good for a couple of years now. But it's funny to watch people's reaction on social media. But there are also overreactions. All these NFL quarterbacks have only played a little bit. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, people freak out one way or the other with these touchdowns, these interceptions in these preseason games. But it does matter. It's your first look. How do you handle pressure? How do you handle being in this situation? So coaches aren't going to just take it lightly if a player makes mistakes. So Stetson Bennett, that's an example. Jalen Carter, very first snap, shakes a dude and hits, I believe it was Josh Johnson, one of the backup quarterbacks for the Ravens, hits Josh Johnson on the first play of the game. I mean, so he shows immediately how, did the NFL mess up? Did 9 or 8 NFL teams mess up by letting Jalen Carter slip to the Philadelphia Eagles? The answer is probably yes to that question. When you put him on the defense, Keely Ringo has a pass deflection, right? They're making plays, and social media only helps this. These plays being distributed. And in that way, Kirby and these assistant coaches, they don't even have to verbalize it in terms of, recruiting players, because it's all over the place and people see it. And Georgia continuing to win, obviously, is one thing, but producing NFL talent will get people to your program. It will get people to your program. It gets people to programs that aren't necessarily dominating, right? I mean, people choose historic programs because they have a chance to go to the NFL as well. But Georgia is going to continue to pump out NFL players. Think about it next year. Who are some players that might get drafted? All right, well, quarterback might get drafted. 2 running backs might get drafted, right? In Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards. Here are NFL candidates on Georgia's roster off the top of my head. I'm not looking at anything, just off the top of my head. NFL candidates who are eligible for the draft. Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, right? Let's say if either of them started. Offensive line, Cedric Van Pran. Both the guards, Xavier Truss and Tate Ratledge, will be eligible. Amarius Mims will be eligible. So we're talking about 4 of the 5 offensive linemen, 2 potential quarterbacks, 2 running backs. These are all NFL eligible players that are probably going to get drafted when it's their turn, right? When it's their turn. And if they've played, these guys are going to get drafted. Arian Smith might get drafted. You telling me an NFL team isn't going to figure out a way to use his speed? Marcus Rosemary-Jackson is a player who may end up testing well in the combine and probably will have a bigger senior year than people think. Lad McConkey, we know, is an NFL draft candidate. Dominic Lovett is an NFL draft candidate. Brock Bowers is a top 5 candidate, right? That was over 10. I lost count. That's just on offense. I don't have to sit here and name all of the defensive players, but, I mean, they're probably going to have a first-round defensive player go. Would that really be shocking if they have another defensive player go in the first round? I'd have to think a little bit more about defense and who would be eligible to come out after this, because they have had more defensive players drafted the last 2 years, and you've got to replace that, and some of it's going to be young talent. But on offense, I mean, over 10 players have an opportunity to get drafted heading into this NFL draft. 10 Georgia players on offense could get drafted. Now, it's not going to happen, right? That would be insane if they all got drafted, right? But it very well could happen. Georgia's defense had a lot of players drafted. They had 5 in the first round 2 years ago, right? And these dogs are dominating when they get a chance. DeAndre Swift making plays, right? We're talking about preseason, and I'm going to get a comment on here talking about, oh, it's just preseason. Yes, but these are NFL reps, right? And these are players who have been elevated past the college level. And they're doing well because part of that is because of what they got to go to Athens, Georgia, and do. And it's being a program that prepares players for the league. It's not surprising when I see these George Pickens touchdowns and these Stetson Bennett touchdowns and these Jalen Carter QB hits and these Keely Ringo. It doesn't surprise me. I expect to see them do that because these are super talented players that come here and then they get molded into something even better. And that's what happens at Georgia. I didn't even tell you about the newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter down below. It is free. If you are not doing that, make sure you are checking that out. All of these stories are getting pushed out to you in your inbox every day. We can't do it all right here for you. Thank you for watching.